The hour of 9 o'clock having arrived, I will call this meeting of the Trempealeau County Property Committee to order. Certification of open meeting law has been met due to proper posting. I will entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as distributed.
Motion.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Before we go to public comment period, I would like to move some items on the agenda. I would like to switch numbers 5 and 6, go into the closed session first. So I think we need a motion to do that.
To move the items or to go to closed session?
No, to change the agenda first.
I make a motion to change the agenda and put 5 ahead of 4. Just
What-
flip them
we
from
would
public
like to-
comment period to Samuel's group.
What we want to do is move 6 up.
At 6? Oh, 6, I'm sorry. I gotta make it bigger.
So I will open the
Yeah.
public comment period. That's a good point. Let's make 6 number 4, 5 would stay number 5, and 4 would be number 6.
So he's gonna do the project discussion in closed session?
No.
We'll come back into open.
So, well, let's get this right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy, yeah, you gotta really, yeah.
Number 6 will be number 4.
Okay.
Number 4 will be number 5. Number 5 will be number 6.
No, I think we gotta go.
Oh, that,
We gotta
I didn't
make-
see number 7 there
Yeah,
either.
we gotta make number 6, number 4, and number 7, number 5.
5. And number 5, number 6, and number 4. Ka!
Whatever it is, there's a motion on it.
Yeah.
Okay, you got a second?
Yeah. I think that's second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Oh, that was a lot harder than it should have been. So, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.85, parent 1, parent D, to consider strategy for crime detection / prevention and other security measures in the new jail facility.
So move.
I would ask that Ashley be allowed to stay in this for the closed session part.
Okay?
And Kirk.
And Kurt. Got a motion and a second, and this is a roll call vote.
Yes.
Sasha, yes. Miller,
Yes.
yes. Adi, yes. Me, yes. Carried. Number 8 here. IT department updates. Tim, take it away.
Did you have to do that?
Oh, sorry.
I didn't leave you.
Yeah,
That's why I was kind of wondering.
never mind. Let's go to Samuel's group venture building project discussion / action.
Okay, so coming out of closed session, I want to continue. That was a explanation of the new jail, and for privacy purposes, that's why and security purposes, that's why we looked at the floor plan in closed session. Open session, I'd like you to grab the drawing packet that I've handed out to you and turn to the second page. I want to walk through the preliminary layout of the existing courthouse renovation. So, again, reminder, the plan for the overall scope of the project was new Justice Center, $40 million, renovation of the existing courthouse, $3.5 million. That's how we got to $43.5 million. We bid out the Justice Center. Project came in over budget at 10-11%. It's consumed the funding for the renovation. And last time we were here, we were talking about finding funding for contingency, finding funding for renovation. You guys wanted to have a discussion on floor plan and preliminary planning. That's what this is about. These drawings are not any further developed than this. So when I show you the development of what's at the Justice Center, all those details that are there, we are not there, to the point that if we decide we're going to move departments, change the configuration, reuse more existing on this floor plan, it's still definitely an option if we continue to pursue work on the renovation. So start with the second page. The center of the drawing there shows you the main entrance that we talked about for the new Justice Center. And as you come through that screening area, you get to the back over by that quick trip entrance. You'll see where there's the changes that I talked to you about, the configuration. As you take a right there, when you get to that larger area, that's where the connection is. This point right here is the connection point of the existing courthouse. And from this point forward is where we're proposing renovations. Now, if you see the areas that are dark, the darker colors, those are walls that will remain as is. The other walls that are in there are new walls. So we would demo everything that isn't a dark wall, open that space up, and then we would come back in and renovate to put new walls in, new finishes for the floors, new finishes for the ceilings, doors, door frames, all those sorts of components to renovate that portion of the project. So I don't plan on going office by office. I want to go department by department, and we'll explain the logic behind why we got to this. Again, we did involve all of the departments that are affected in this portion. And the first two departments that you see on the first floor, right behind the elevator lobby there, is ADRC and Veterans. The reason that that location was selected was because of mobility issues for those individuals that will typically come to those departments. And we wanted to have them as close as we could get them to the front door. It's still a distance from where they're going to park at an ADA parking stall to walk through that space and get into ADRC or Veterans, but it's by design that those two are side by side. One of the things that we've heard from individuals is that the individuals that come to those departments typically go to both of those departments. So that's the reason for that area. As you continue down the corridor and we get into this east wing of the courthouse, you'll see that that lower level is, or that main level, it's not the lower level, the grade level is human services. So that wing is all human services offices that are along that section there. You continue down that portion and you can see down below, which would be the old sheriff's office on the first floor there. Land management is in those spaces, and register of deeds is there in that upper corner of the building. If you want to turn to
See where they're at now.
yeah. So the second page that you turn to is the second floor. And as you just saw at our the layout of the new courthouse, is that a majority of the second floor ends up moving into the new addition. And then that frees up the footprint of this building. Now, again, the dark walls are the ones that are to remain. The light walls are the new walls. So there's more areas in here where we were able to reuse existing walls than the lower level. But coming off of that connecting lobby, we then enter in, and the county clerk and the treasurer are all in that space. You'll see 3 conference rooms on the south side of that connector. Those conference rooms are used for public meetings, and we have them anticipated that those could be televised for those committee meetings. And the intention is that if you have a committee meeting like of this committee and you can fit inside of those spaces, those could be utilized for those committee meetings. You get into the east wing again, you'll see that the health department is in that area, human resources and corporation council, and then IT is down in the old DA's office on the very south end of that east wing. And then UW Extension is in that old jail area, and that was really driven around the reuse of the kitchen so that they can deal with some of the training that is done with that element that's in there. And like I shared with you, the jail portion on the second floor is mainly going to remain unchanged. And one of the things that we've talked to Jeremy about is some of that space may be storage. We may end up looking at some office space in there for maintenance, but right now we're just showing we're not changing any of the finishes, we're not changing any of the doors. That configuration stays as is. So And go back to the first page. I started with the middle one because it gets you in the door, front entry. The first page is really this lower level. You can see that the majority of this, the majority of this level is unexcavated on the east wing. You do have a lower level that's on your south wing and your north wing. And we're sitting in that county board space. The only thing that we've done there in that county board space is we show that this wall would get opened up if you wanted to have a bigger space. It would not need to be done. We still show that county community TV would stay down here. I know that's been a request of finding a different location so that we can move everybody out of the lower levels, and that would be an area we would want to look at if we do decide to move into further design of this area. So that gives you the kind of the snapshot of where this design is. There were several meetings with these departments. I think at the end of the meetings, I don't want to say all of them, but most of the departments were pleased with how it came out. And it was really a puzzle piece of where do they fit and what makes the most sense in regards to adjacencies and efficiencies of those departments. So, questions on any of that? So the next step would be is if we decided to find a way to fund that, what happens with this design. This is really a schematic design. We would then jump into design development, which could mean floor plan tweaks, as well as then we would start to get into discussion about mechanical, electrical infrastructure, all of those sorts of elements. But right now, none of that is proceeding because of budget constraints. So.
What is that dollar amount?
Well, at the time we had $3.5 million. I have not repriced it in today's dollars, and I think that would be an exercise we would want to do. Is that if you guys do decide to assign some funding to it, I think the next step would be evaluate this layout and identify if you think that this is a feasible layout or if there's adjustments you want to make. Make adjustments to the floor plan, and then let's reprice it and see what it is in today's dollars. That would be my next step, and that could be done at there's no additional cost to at least get to that level, so we can make those
It would
decisions.
be our decision then if we just can't see ourselves coming up with the funding that.
Yeah.
And
And,
we'll have to just start making plans because some people have to move regardless, I think, right?
and there's another element that has been talked about is that, the building functions, you could move people into offices, it just isn't going to be efficient, right? And then you would have segmented departments, right? You may look at this and say, we want to make some of these adjustments, but it's not our end solution,
Sort of like the way things are now, only in different spaces.
Yeah, and, does that work? Is it efficient? The answer would be no. But the space is there. It's not like the building isn't there. But there are, like Jeremy has talked about, there's issues that you deal with mechanically that would be addressed with renovating this space. If you don't address them, you still have to deal with those sorts of things.
For
So,
the human services, with all these various spaces, how do you deal with heating and cooling in those spaces?
For currently,
Pardon?
like currently, for all the spaces that are there now?
Well, but they're,
I mean, even if all that changes, there are so many different VAB boxes to so many different zones of human services. But right now, let's say in a good portion of it on the eastern side, every 2 offices share a thermostat. So if office A is hot and office B is cold, they're kind of at a loss.
yeah, well, I guess what I'm saying is that with the looks of this schematic here, we're talking about many, many more divisions.
Yeah, well, and then like I said, I can open up a whole other can of worms with that first floor because you have no heating or cooling in the hallway at all. So every time you open that front door during the summer, we get hot and humid air rolling through that floor.
Yeah, of course, we wouldn't have
And-
that under the.
Well, and right now, there's no room above the ceiling to put any more ductwork into the hallway on the
But I
front
guess what I'm
floor.
saying is, how are you gonna deal with that in the cost involved in that, in this remodel?
so in the renovation, we do have a budgeted amount to upgrade the mechanical systems. So you would end up having new VAVs, you would have new controls. To Jeremy's point, from a to be cost effective, every room doesn't have its own VAV. Typically, you will see that they'll be shared on 2 or 3 rooms. but your controls that you have nowadays, compared to what he's dealing with right now, are a much more efficient, so you don't see as much fluctuation between them. So, to answer your question, if you did this design, you would see a new mechanical infrastructure in there that would provide that heating and cooling so that it's efficient.
Boy, that's 3.5.
Not in today's dollars.
3.5.
Yeah, not in today's dollars.
Wouldn't do it.
Not with what happened, mechanical and electrical costs, yeah. It would not.
Well, I talked to an electrician yesterday, and the cost of his materials, wiring is 3 times what it was.
Yep.
And conduit is 2.5 times what it was 3 years ago.
Yep.
Wow.
So we're talking at maybe 5 million, wouldn't you
I
say?
think we're looking at higher than that probably.
I think rather than, if we truly want to pursue some additional discussion on this, the direction we would need from the committee would be, let's make some adjustments to this floor plan. I know many of you have seen this for the first time. If we want to make some adjustments and then price that in today's dollars, that would be an exercise to go through. And there's no cost to get that done. It would get you the data that you needed. If we're at the point that we say there's no way we're going to fund it, then I think that exercise would be, unnecessary.
What's our time, what is the time frame for that?
So we're still planning that fall of '23 is when you're going to move into the addition. So we would want to have, if we're talking about that move, we would like to have the documents ready to bid prior to that so that we could have contractors on board. So, it would be nice if we had something by this fall decided on that, September.
Mr. Cornman?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to communicate a few of my concerns, and I certainly understand all the challenges involved in a project like this, financially and otherwise. But one of the things regarding the remodel renovation, there hasn't been any communication with the Department of Land Management in 1.5 years, and I'm sure the input that was shared prior to 1.5 years ago isn't quite the same that it is now. So I just want to emphasize the concerns about our location in the sheriff's office. That space has no windows, so it's very, natural light is one of the keys to productivity in a good workplace. So there's no windows in there, and what I've seen is there was people in the building saying, well, you guys need a locker room. No, we don't need a locker room. We need exterior walls with windows.
So maybe you can share with the committee that you weren't here at the time when we did that.
Correct.
So I know there's some new board members here. And this floor plan was in place before you had been given your position. And that's why I reference is that we would want to revisit this
Right.
to make sure that there's configurations and those sorts of things. And to that point, if we move forward, there would definitely be input from your group. It's just been paused for
I
obvious
just
purposes.
want to make that
Yep.
clear because it didn't seem like when I've reached out, I wasn't getting feedback
Yep.
about, where things were going. And so I just want to emphasize that there is certainly some challenges with that space.
Understood.
And my thought on things, if we're going to do a renovation that should last for several decades, and it's a challenge to do this project, challenge financially, but it is to the best that we can. We should try to do it right the first time. That's my approach to things and my thought process. So I appreciate the committee's time, your time.
Understood.
And look forward to working with everyone on this going forward.
Yep.
Thank you. If I remember correctly, cost per square foot, new construction, remodeling, and depending on what you're remodeling, really is a big swing.
Yeah.
Because one of the many times we tried to deal with this particular issue, we were told that the cost of remodeling what is now the secure facility of the jail would be a higher per square foot cost
Yep.
than new construction because of the way it's built.
Demolition.
Now, the same thing hold true of the administrative area of that wing, or is that cost not quite
No,
the same?
the area that you start to run into additional costs is where you have to do demolition of that secure area. just the labor and, the way of removing that. There is still areas down there that are block walls, so that's not as cost effective as taking down a stud and drywall wall, so there's an element. It's just different when it's a poured, reinforced wall versus a studs and drywall wall.
And when that concrete block is full of concrete,
Yeah.
it makes it even more fun.
Right. So, again, I know this is just new to you. I hope you got it in an email. I brought you hard copy so that you can mark it up, scratch on it. If it's something you want to revisit and make it an agenda item for next month's meeting, by all means. It's just, I want you to know that this has been paused for obvious purposes. And we were talking about it last month. I want to get it in front of you.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that we seriously consider perhaps extra second meeting the next few months to deal with this particular problem. I think we need to, number one, we need to walk through what we have now and see what we have, and then really do some searching in terms of what we absolutely need to do at this point.
I agree, and I have talked to Kurt about it in the past and brought it up at this committee in the past. I think we are fast approaching that point where we're going to need more than one meeting per month. If we're expected to make decisions that could have long-lasting repercussions, we need to meet more than once a month.
Yeah, and we may find in the process that we need to do something in steps, too. We may not be able to do it all at once.
Yeah. Well, I think the appropriate way to do that is to get the okay from the full board, because unless we're going to donate that second meeting or subsequent meeting in a month and not
No,
give it for
I
Jim.
think you as chair can call a meeting. You have the power to call
Yeah.
a meeting.
But I would like to make sure that if this is going to be something that occurs for the, and I'm guessing it will, for the remainder of the project, and then maybe to the transition period, we need to make sure that the full board can say yay or nay, because there's going to be additional cost just for the committee.
So I can tell you from experience is that we've been able to manage monthly meetings, and if you guys are of the position that if we have an urgent item that we could call a meeting in short order, I'm talking just the function of the addition is fine. To Dick's point, I think it would be good if we have this as a separate action item for a separate meeting, so we can focus on that.
I don't think one meeting is going to be enough.
No, not to deal with this issue, but to deal with issues that come up on the project. I'm not saying that there won't be an issue that comes up that we need it, but to say that we need to have it for the next year, you guys meet twice a month, I think that's overkill.
Oh, yeah, no, I think so, too.
Yeah.
But you're talking about, you had mentioned earlier that it would be good to have an idea of where we want to go.
Yes.
By this fall.
Yep.
Well, that means we need to get together here, at least for the next few months.
Yep.
On a second meeting. Dan, if you think we need the permission from the county board, I don't think we do, but the advantage of doing that, obviously, is to say, we got some issues here.
Well, I think just at the very least, an announcement to the full board.
Well, and
the possibility is there, and
right. I think, again, to point out that there's some big decisions that have to be made between now and the time that this building is completed.
yeah.
Yeah. So I support your idea. But I think an announcement would be good.
All righty then. Construction bulletin update?
Yep. I've got a couple here for you. The last time we met, I told you that we were working on some pricing for a couple of items, and we've got the pricing back. I want to walk you through them here. So let's start with, I suppose I should get to my mic. Let's start with 55. 55 was the skylight item that I shared with you guys last time about when we were going through the shop drawing review and the submittal on the skylights. There was an issue with the coordination of the sizing and what's available from the skylight manufacturer, and there's been a revision in the size of the skylight. Kurt and our team has looked at multiple options to see if we can reuse and stay with the same size. It's not achievable, it's not attainable. So in order to make the skylight change appropriate, the change that we have here is at that 26,249. And what it boils down to, it's not just the skylights, but it's the skylight, and then there is a curb that comes down to the roof. So these skylights are, they're not the skylights that you think in your home that are a nicety. These are a requirement by the DOC. And where they're placed is on top of the housing unit, and where I showed you guys the layout of the housing unit. Natural light comes in from the skylight to the second floor, and then there's actually an area in front of that day room that goes down to the first floor, and it's a requirement by DOC. And what we're running into is that there is a changed component in regards to how the configuration has to be, and that is a price from Pollinger here of the 26,249. So.
Who made the change? Or why was the change
So the
made?
change came up from the review, the way that the process works, and I'm glad you brought that up. So every contractor, and this is just a representation. Every contractor, this is the bid set of documents, the drawings that are there. Every contractor, when they bid the project, they bid it based on the specs. And then before they can order their equipment or their material, they have to provide another set of, we call shop drawings or cut sheets of that product that is then submitted to the design team of record for review and approval or rejection to say you're in compliance with what was spec'd. And this was caught during that shop drawing review, that the size that was there was not available, and that it wasn't going to be able to fit. So then the discussion was what could fit. And it increased the overall size of that curb and the connection for the drywall that connects that down into that area. This is really driven by what's available from the vendor versus what was on the documents. So
it was designed to that size, but the design was wrong.
yeah, it's not capable of meeting that size, correct. So let's park that one there, and then let's go to 57. And we're in a unique position because I know that you guys can't take action on this today because we don't have funding for it. That's why I preface this at the county board to let the board know that we have these issues that are going to be coming up to us for the need of contingency. Because in April, when I had told you to table that, because we had a bunch of new members, we didn't have the need for that contingency money at that time, but we knew it was coming. And I wanted to give the group some time to understand the project, to get more details that are there. These items are here before us today, and I know that as the property committee, you guys were authorized to make these decisions as long as we were within the budget. Because these are over budget, we don't have the contingency dollars, you can't take action on them. So I know coming out of here, we're not going to have approval, we're not going to have rejection because we can't take action on them. But I want you to see that there is the need for the contingency and that there's others that are coming. Now, I do want to tell you, there's CBs that we're working on where we're going to find some savings. We're waiting on those numbers yet. We anticipate that we'll have them in the next couple of weeks. But this is the reason for the CBs and the process that's there. This next one is dealing with, we have a keying meeting. So what happens in the project is that the architect specifies the doors and specifies hardware. The contractors will then come back and bid the doors and the hardware and how they are configured with a lock set, whether there's electric strike, whether it's monitored through the security system. And all of that was done door by door with the users group, the design team, and our group. We put the documents out for bid. Contractors come back, and there is a required spec meeting to have what we call a keying meeting. And during that keying meeting, we go through every door opening and verify its function and make sure that the function that was specified is the function that the end users want. there are always changes made in that meeting, and that's what happened here, is that we added some electric function from a security perspective throughout the footprint of the building, where a door, and I'm not going to bore you with door by door, the essential function is that the function that was spec'd is different than the function that we want to have in that now. That meeting included our team, the sheriff's staff were there. Jeremy, I think you attended that. The design team was there. So it was a group decision on door-by-door function. So this is a sizable number. If you turn to the second page, it ends up being that 61 grand. It's a big number. Those are items that are essential to the building. It's something that we would need to get ordered, but again, it's funding that we don't have. And last time we met, the question was, what's a realistic contingency number? I still feel comfortable with the 3%. That's why I had actually shared that number with Mr. Zinklin when he made that motion back in April. I still think that that's a fair number. And then you would manage the contingency. Typically what would happen is that the board would authorize that contingency for you to manage, and then you would approve or reject these, and then that contingency would be managed by this committee. We don't have that fund anymore. So the recommendation, or what I would see, is that we need this. That's why I said that to the board. We would need to come back to the board with a recommendation on finding contingency money for that, however that ends up being accomplished. So
that figure is 1.2?
yeah, it was, I can't remember what the number was that I gave Tim. 3% of that is like 1.2 or whatever the number is. And again, at the end of the day, the goal is that we don't have to spend any of it. The reality is we're going to use some of it. And it's not that 1.2, once you allocate it to contingency, is all spent. There's contingency dollars that are remaining, and then you could allocate that to the renovation. You could just end up not using it. So that's kind of my update. I gave you guys the update on Monday with where we are progress-wise, but this contingency funding is and also the FF&E. That's why that motion or that resolution that was before you in April that we tabled, there's still FF&E, which includes furnishing and some equipment, that those budgets were consumed with the over budget as well. So it's something to consider, and then if it means we got to go to exec finance, if you want me to go to a different committee and talk through the process, if I have to go to every committee so they understand it before we get to board, I'm open to that. I want to communicate clearly to them the function and the use of it.
This, once again, we're kind of back to last time. I think you were talking about the doors.
Yep.
Is this what you were talking about last time?
No, the doors last time was a sound rating.
Yeah.
And after we evaluated that with the design team, we decided to keep the sound rating where they're at. We're not going to make changes to that one.
And
So.
you just said, Kurt, you said this is what we need. Well, why didn't the engineers say this is what we need when they engineered it and put it into the specs? They knew what they needed. You said you had the conversations with the people. To me, it would have been just common sense to say, okay, let's do it this.
Yep.
Or did they purposely do it cheap to make the bid come in low
I
so
can-
the board would be happy?
I can assure you that there was no purposeful direction to make this cheap. I can guarantee you that. I will personally vouch for that. What I can explain to you is that these details are elements that we do spend time. It's not that it was just spec'd by the design team. There was involvement from all of us, and that as we go through and look at it a second time, that changes are made. And I would much rather do it now before things are ordered than after when we get here and Jeremy says, hey, this function doesn't work, because then it's going to cost even more. The thing that I want you to understand is that if it would have been in there on bid day, your bids would have been higher, okay? And I don't, it's going to come to your position of saying, hey, they did it to do it cheap. It wasn't intentional. It is the component of, if it was in there, you would have paid more for the components that are there.
Well, I guess my reaction to Audie's comment, it's a reasonable question, I think, Audie. The problem that I see is that we've got a $43 million project, and boy, there's a lot of potential with a project that size for price changes or issues like this to come up. You know, I think if it's on a home project, we're looking at, we're a few $1,000s, but here, we're looking at hundreds of thousands probably. Dan, a question for you. I know you and I had discussed earlier this pot of money that COVID ended up contributing to the county. And at the time, I think that the request for this contingency amount was made. I think you and I saw a need to not touch much of that money because of the unknown. Go ahead.
At the time in the April meeting that I made the motion
Yeah.
to table this indefinitely, I had two trains of thought. We had, out of 17 people, we had basically 10 people who were seeing that for the first time. And my concern was that we would assign this much money to FF&E and this much money to contingency, and what would happen if the end figures were more than those amounts? Because once, I thought, we assigned a dollar figure to each one of those, the rest of the ARPA funds would be distributed elsewhere throughout the county. And like I said at the time, many, much thought went into requests for that ARPA funds, and for the most part, they were all legitimate and responsible requests. But if we get to the end of our project and we don't have enough money, what are our options? And I would much rather see, and because of the timing, I think we're fortunate. We don't have to have the ARPA funds expended until after this project is expected to be complete. So, from my own perspective, it doesn't make any sense to distribute any of those ARPA funds until we know how much of it we're gonna need to cover our costs for this project.
And I certainly see your point, and I think I agree with that. Though I think we have these issues that come up like this, we have to give the everybody, we have to respond to them. And I guess how do you have some idea how we can respond to that and yet protect, in a sense, that ARPA money and not commit it until we know how much this commitment is going to cost?
Well, I think Kurt needs to speak to that, because I'm not entirely sure how this project gets paid for and when.
So here's what I've done on other projects, and it's a matter of how we manage that contingency. I've been on projects where we earmark a contingency at the beginning of the project, and once we start to get the building enclosed, we get through the shop drawing review process, we get through acquisition of materials, we get through a majority of the coordination, the need for the contingency, I'm not going to say that it's eliminated, but we start to have a lot of our unknowns known.
Sure.
And at that point, you can look at us and say, are we comfortable, right? When we get to the point that we're 75% complete with the project or 80% complete with the project, to your point, we're scheduled to be done fall of '23. You don't have to have ARPA funding allocated until December of '24. You have a full year. We may be able to talk in the summer of '23 and say, hey, how are we sitting with our contingency funds? Can we start to release some of that money? Because if you earmark that $5.7 million for this project, obviously, we're not going to need $5.7 million. The question that I would have, and I think that's the deeper discussion, is that if you truly want to look at the renovation, if some of that funding is tied to that renovation, that's the exercise, like Dick said, why I would say let's work on that to September, and when you get to September, maybe then you make a determination if more of that is allocated to the project, or if that's done through another funding source, or if there's limited scope on the renovation.
And by September, you're talking 22.
Yes, so that
As
we
you
do some
stated
homework,
earlier.
we work with the new committee, we work with, obviously, there's new department heads, let's get through that floor plan, let's put put a budget to that, and then you guys have that data in front of you to say, how much do we allocate, if any of that, to the work? So,
Well, the question I have is, with these particular documents, where do we stand on funding these?
right now, you don't have the funding to fund them.
That's what I'm saying.
That's maybe, I was thinking maybe should we have a joint meeting between property and exec finance and see exactly what their thinking was to cover some of these overruns in the beginning, because we weren't here, you were here. And sit down and see where the county's actually sitting financially, so we know which avenue. It's a shame to use the ARPA funds because they could be dispersed throughout the community, county to everybody. But if that's the path we gotta
Well,
choose, or do we just go in
Yeah, and I think what I'm
redo some
thinking-
with the borrowing?
What I'm thinking, and maybe Dan shares my thinking, I'll let him correct me if I'm mistaken here. The county, a previous county board has made a commitment for this county board.
Correct.
And rather than making new commitments, we've got to fulfill our current commitments, because we can't do everything, as you well know, you know. So I guess I definitely agree with Dan that the ARPA money needs to be untouched, but we still have these issues. That means that we have to touch it, I think. And if we can get the executive committee as well as this committee to agree on a resolution that would say something to that effect, that this ARPA money at this point will be dedicated, number one, to fulfill our obligation set forth here. Number two, as there's leftover money, then we can deal with that. But and I think we could almost put that in a resolution form if they would be in agreement to support. We would have the votes to lock that up, but still funnel some of that in. And we don't have to funnel it all into that. We could funnel, say, 1.2 at this point. But this is kind of what you want to see. You want to see us to make sure we don't spend money we don't have
Correct. I mean,
for future programs.
the distribution of ARPA funds as requested by different department heads, to me, increases the likelihood that when we get to the end of the project, we don't have the money to pay for it. And the options available to us at that point, because leaving it unfinished is not an option in my mind. Those options open to us are extremely limited, and the one that pops into my head is going out for another bond on an issue that was large enough to begin with in my mind, faced with unforeseen circumstances. We couldn't have planned for COVID and the results to the cost of this project, but we still have to do our due diligence and be responsible to the taxpayer on how to get this completed.
Was there ever any discussion amongst the old board that, okay, let's say we come up $3 million short? Any kind of conversation did they ever have to be like the devil's advocate and say, okay, what are we gonna do with that? And if you wouldn't have got the ARPA money, you would have had to have some kind of plan. Did you guys ever have that discussion or anything with the board or even with the property committee?
Well, when this started this is just the way I see it, when the prices started coming in on the bids, and the increases, they didn't all happen at once, and we were still, to begin with, we weren't sure how ARPA money was able to be spent. When we started seeing the cost overruns and inflated pricing, the restrictions on the ARPA money were that wasn't available to be paying for that stuff. You know, things fell nicely for us and the taxpayers in Trempealeau County in that as time progressed, the feds changed the requirements and where we could spend ARPA funds. Because for a significant portion of, once we knew it was coming, it was to be used for very specific things, not construction and not, well, they've relaxed those requirements. So it hasn't been for a very long time that we knew we would be able to use ARPA funds to cover some of these overruns. And, you know, me being the eternal optimist, I hope that doesn't change and become more restrictive before we get done with this. The longer I live, the more I think, oh, you never can tell. You don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow.
You don't think of having a joint meeting between us and exec finance so we could?
Well,
would be,
Sam, when is
good
it,
Or not?
when is exec finance scheduled? Do you
July
have,
11th,
pardon?
July 11th, the week after the 4th of July.
Okay.
Well, I certainly
I-
agree that we need to
I think we need
have
to
some
meet with-
resolution in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're gonna have more of these. You just are.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna wanna.
Could we- could
We're
we-
committed to this way it is, so we gotta make the best, and we gotta have, like, I agree with Dick, we gotta have something that we can look at and say yes, rather than having to take it back and take
Yeah.
it back.
Well, why don't, Dan, if that date works for you, could you touch base with the chair of that committee? And see if we can't, during their meeting, have a joint meeting. And I guess, I think, what I would think we should seriously consider proposing to them for their, looking for, hopefully, support from them, is that we do lock that ARPA money up, but then also ask for a transfer of a portion into funding for this purpose.
Yeah. I will do that. When is that meeting scheduled?
July 11th.
9, 8:30, what, here, 9 o'clock?
But I think if we can go in with the potential of, 8:30,
8:30?
that would be 9 people. If they would be all supportive, I don't think there would be any issue in doing that. But we need to lock that up.
Yes.
And maybe that's the wrong term to use, but that's what we're talking about
We
doing.
need a game plan here, is what we need,
Sure.
you know, says how we're gonna do this.
Right.
Like you say, we're committed to this, we're stuck with this,
Yeah.
so.
I'll be there.
We had talked briefly about some language. You said you had ideas about a language for a resolution, because we should have an idea going into this meeting how that will be.
And we can also touch base with Corp Counsel on that, too. With the chair and the two of you be able to touch base with
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Corp Counsel on that? That would be good.
Yeah. Because as we get these, you don't wanna keep, some of those you wanna put off because
Yeah.
it's delivery,
Yeah.
timing.
Because these things haven't been ordered yet. And, you know, we know what the delivery situation is on
Yeah.
many things right now.
Mr. Sheriff,
Kevin.
hopefully, I know the taxpayers, if they see this project overruns and stuff too, and bonding, issues, but you think in September things will calm down some of you thought a little bit with that? I don't know, if you said September, you have more idea of financially, or forget exactly.
Well, he was talking about the remodeling in the old section.
Okay.
And that's something that's an additional issue.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be able to comment on when things are gonna slow down economically.
But I think you made the point that obviously, if you've got 100 steps to the building project, and we go through 80 of them, then it'll be fewer after that.
Yeah, I hope so. It seems like every time we turn around, there's, yeah.
Yeah.
can be there on the 11th if you'd like.
Yes, please.
And that's 8:30, Sam said, okay.
That's all I have for an update, unless you guys have questions for me.
I do not.
Okay, thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you, Kurt.
Yep.
Thank you.
Now, I don't see Tim Robertson, so why don't we take Jeremy?
So I don't have much, be short and quick and easy for right now. So just the reiteration of the last time I was here, I'm still getting up all of my bids and estimates to present to you guys because we'll have my preliminary budget hearing technically with you guys. I believe it's normally in August, so I'll be bringing you the stuff that I'll be requesting for next year's capital expense projects. Most of those are fairly plain and simple things that I'll be asking for. As Kurt was discussing the locks earlier when we went through that keying meeting for the new building, I'll be bringing up that one here for rekeying this building to match the new building. Now with that process comes a few other things because a lot of the doorknobs in the building here are actually knobs and not levers, as opposed to, for that becomes an issue for ADA compliance, so we have to change a bunch of those. The way a bunch of the doors are made. So that'll be one of them, was locks, and I brought that one up before, and I think the last time I brought it up was about $300,000 to redo the locks here, the locks and handles, and that was 4 years ago, the last time that I brought that one up. So, but that's going to be something that should be done. One, because the current locks in the building here are out of patent, and two, because it would be a lot more efficient to have the same key system in this building as in the new building coming up.
This would be coordinated with the potential remodel.
Correct.
Right.
I've already discussed and walked through this building with the vendor that's supplying the locks for the new building. So they'll be the ones that are giving me one of the prices that I'll be basing my capital expense request on. So, so we got to count of the knobs, the locks, the type of locks, the types of keys, everything else, because each one of those keys is a different cost for the different type of lock that I'm going to put in the door, depending on the type of security that area needs, whether it's a HIPAA compliant door, not a HIPAA compliant door, so some of those things change the cost. I'll also be looking to buy some more carpet, because as you can see in rooms like this here, this carpet was put in the early 90s. We can only clean it so many times before we start sucking out all of the fibers that are in the carpet. There's stains that we can't get out. There's rips up in line management. Some of those areas will be held off on, like the hallway and line management, because as the building gets remodeled as it needs to be, that area, those carpets are going to come out anyway. Some of the floors I'll be looking at taking out the carpet and just putting in some vinyl strips, as opposed to stuff that I don't need to wax, stuff that I don't need to strip, and stuff that'll last a little bit longer. Other areas, like in the hallway out here, we've just put in the carpet squares, which are a little bit easier to maintain. When somebody spills something in there, I only have to rip out 1 or 2 pieces of carpet instead of the whole hallway. So I'll be looking at buying some more of that. Of course, for request for a pole shed, which I've mentioned that before too, as well as paving what is now the dirt parking lot outside. The reason I haven't been able to pave that yet is because the city wouldn't let me do that, because I didn't get in on the watershed report from when they redid the street. So I have to wait until all the current permits are done before I can pull a new permit to put blacktop down where the dirt is now. That was a DNR issue that they gave me, because they wouldn't let me put any blacktop down. That's why it's still dirt and why I have to have it repacked every year now.
Now, is that going to be a permanent parking area then?
I plan for it to be to a point. My hope is to be able to put a shed on a portion of it, and then have remaining of that area parking spots, because that's where I intend to have all of the county vehicles park, instead of eating up spots in the main parking lot in front of the building. The land management trucks, health department vehicles, human services chiefs, all those should be able to park over there, so we're not eating up public parking spots on the front side of the building. Major issues this month were nothing too crazy. We are having to replace the HVAC filters a little bit more frequently now, because the Masons took down the winter shelter that they had around where they were mixing their mortar. So now every time they dump these huge vats of powder in there to mix with water, it shoots up giant clouds of dust everywhere, which then gets sucked into my HVAC intakes, my boiler intakes, and the chiller compressors. So we've got to clean those out, and we put on some mock filters now and then so we're not destroying all those newer units outside. We started painting areas of this building to match the new colors that are going to be into the new building, so I pulled the specs on those. I bought some of that paint, so instead of the white or the blue or the prison gray that we have now, we have the current colors. So once I get a few of those done this month, if you guys want to see what those look like, I'll bring a list next month of the rooms that we've already painted with the newer colors. I'm going to be helping out emergency management here over the next probably 6 weeks. There's a couple radio towers that they're having some heat issues with, and I had a little bit of extra funding left over in one of my capital expense projects for air conditioner mini split units. So I bought a few smaller mini split units that we'll be installing into some of these radio towers to help alleviate the heat issues that they're having in those. So I've got those ordered, and they'll be here within the next 10 days, and then we'll start putting those in. So myself or my staff will be going out with Dustin to put those in those radio towers as they come in. The biggest issue that we've had this month is plumbing. I spoke to Adi about some of this last time I seen him, where we've replaced a bunch of the cast iron in this building to PVC because we are getting some rot going on in some of that in some of that old cast that we couldn't quite explain, even though they were on the horizontal runs. I've got cast iron now in vertical runs that are in the walls that is starting to leak. Right now in the sheriff's department, in the sheriff's restroom, it's leaking into the Trempealeau room below it. If you can picture, I got a solid brick wall with about a 10-inch void in between, which is where all of the plumbing stacks run through. And that runs 12 feet high, all the way from floor to ceiling. I got no way to get to that cast iron in the bottom, especially because the masons look like they dumped all of their excess mortar in between the wall on my pipes, which is probably not helping the matter of that stuff just sitting on the pipes for that long. So I've got a contractor here now. We're having to rip out a good portion of a brick wall in the sheriff's department so that we can actually fix the one pipe that's behind it. We're probably going to end up replacing all the cast that's in that wall just so that I don't have to do this again later, because they never built any access for me to get to the back of the sheriff's department showers, the sheriff's department toilets, anything up there. So we're going to be looking at all of the cast iron that's in that area now too, because if I'm doing the project now, I might as well open everything up. Instead of taking out 6 tiles at once or 6 bricks at once, I might as well take out all 60 that are there and get everything fixed at once. So hopefully, and it just seems to be on the south side of the building where we've had the major issues. I do have cast on this southern side of the building, or on this northern side of the building, but all this cast was put in the 70s. That stuff was put in 1980, 1981, and for whatever reason, that batch over there of cast is just not holding up. All the stuff over here seems to be just fine. So that's the biggest project that I got going on this month, and it's an ongoing one that we've started right now. Other than that, like I said, it's just been the basics, doing the PMs that we need to do, getting out pricing for, like I said, I've already started to order the stuff that I needed to order for the new building across that's being built, that'll be here next year. Gave me an echo, Al. Any questions?
You know, just a comment, we were in the hardware business at that time, and they were switching over to Japanese-made pipe, steel pipe. And it was all off-size. It wouldn't fit any of the threading equipment that was made at that time. And, you know, I wonder if there was some switching that went over to different pipe from different places. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that I couldn't speak to. At least what I have here, if it says 4 inches, all the 4-inch. All of the. Okay.
All of the 4 inches. All of the, anything that says 4 inch, all the patches, pieces, or adapters, anything I buy fitted.
As it is a 4 inch or a 6 inch or the 1.5 inch, but for whatever reason, like I said, it's just deteriorating. And I could understand to a point if it was just, like I said, the horizontal runs and it was rusting on the bottom. But it was all the horizontal runs rotting at the top and all of the vertical runs now that are starting to get holes in the side of the pipe, which just doesn't make
I just can't.
any
understand.
mechanical sense to
When you
me.
showed it to me, I've seen casts, wear out on the bottom.
Yeah.
Just rot, I should say, but never on top.
Never on the top.
And
Yeah,
so-
and like I said, it just happens to be that particular section. Any of the other stuff that was 4 or 5 years prior, 4 or 5 years after, a bunch of the stuff that's in the mechanical room still needs to be replaced too, because that's just, I've got a lot of scale in those pipes, so I actually have a process coming up here pretty soon where we're gonna try to reverse flush the heating system, because I've got so much stuff just building up on those pipes that all my filters and the inside of the boilers are just starting to accumulate too much stuff. So we've tried to flush it before. I'm going to try to reverse flush it this time just to see. That's kind of a lengthy process. I think I hold, I don't know, it's maybe 15,000 gallons of water in that heating system and about 15 in the chilling, so it does take a little bit to get it done. But we're hoping to have that done here by the end of the year too. So, and then I'll know whether I'm going to request for the replacement of the piping in that as a capital expense for next year or not, so. If you got nothing else for me, I got nothing else for you.
It's
Not
plenty,
right
isn't
now.
it?
And like I said, August will be the one I'm asking for money. This is just a quick little brief, so.
Thanks, Jeremy. Al, you're up.
Well, I guess I'm just back here, I was on the agenda. Did the health department meet, discuss that lot,
Yeah, I'm not
or
aware
the
of
healthcare center?
if they had a discussion or not.
You're on that, Dick.
Well, you're talking about the county care center.
Yes.
The county healthcare center, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
May I make an observation? And this is something this hits home for me because I think I've made the error. There's an insensitivity that I see here, and I've probably contributed to it in the past. When this issue of the county care center property, and not just with Al, but I think it's come up in the past, where we don't always talk to people ahead of time. And Al, I don't know where it started, whether you went to, from your committee, you went to here or where, but there's a feeling that we need to talk back and forth. And the staff out there, the administration, are very willing to cooperate. And I think you talked to Jerry Dietz, didn't you? Wasn't he?
He attended our highway
Yeah,
committee
yeah.
last week.
He was there.
And we have a Board of Trustees meeting coming up on the 6th. And Jerry and I have, in fact, I met with him yesterday on another issue, and we did talk about it some. And I think, I don't think there will be probably issues to deal with. I think that's going to be a fairly easy thing to deal with. But I guess what I would encourage, and Al, I'll use your situation out there if I may. If I would, coming from a different department, would say, I want a certain space you guys have out there that you've had for years, that's empty, I need that for something. And if I went out and talked to you about it beforehand, we could deal with the matter. You say, well, I can't give it up, and so forth and so on, and we go from there. Communication. I guess all I'm trying to say is that communication is really important, because the healthcare center has had that property. Dan, you haven't been around here 150 years, have you?
Not yet. Looks like it.
Well, the combination, you two guys.
Yeah, hey,
there you go.
almost 100
That
years.
farm has been part of the support system for the care center for 140 years. And so that's a pretty important piece of their operation out there. But they're very willing to work with the other members of the county. There's no question about it. So, be aware of that. And I think what I'm going to ask the committee to do is to formalize a letter of memorandum, is that the right term?
Yep.
And to extend.
Memorandum of understanding, MOU.
Yeah, of understanding, and then submit that to, Al, submit that to the highway department and the committee, and for you guys to take a look at that and see if that's seems reasonable, but it would be a vehicle by which it would make a commitment. Now, I'm talking ahead of things here, but it would be a commitment to your department and the highway committee that that piece of ground that you had indicated in the map would be available at the appropriate time. So, and I think that you were looking for that, weren't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Jerry had mentioned, all that, just
Yeah.
what you're saying to us
Yeah.
last Tuesday about the MOU and,
Yeah.
not doing anything with the ground until the day comes when highway has funding and we can actually break ground, so.
So I think we would put this in a format so that you guys could take a look at it and consider it and see if that meets your needs. And then, obviously, if there's a question, get back to the Board of Trustees. But, I think I think they're all gonna be willing to work with.
Yeah.
You're on that too, aren't you? You're on the highway
Highway.
committee? Yeah. Yeah, both of you are. That this would, I would hope would take care of the matter that you've put forth. Then the bigger problem is money.
Yeah,
Yeah, moving on to that. But that would prepare you to move on to that,
correct, yeah.
okay?
Yep. Yeah, that's basically everything Jerry just told us last Tuesday. He didn't think there'd be any issues and,
Yeah.
get an MOU set
Well,
up.
I think what happened is he picked up information. I think he looks at agendas probably, and some of these things appeared on the agenda. And when did we talk about it at the last property meeting?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's when I went the next day or two. I went out and I said, "This is what was proposed." And I said, "We'll have to be putting this on our agenda." And I think, again, communication is so important here. I think it surprised him that this was being proposed, and he was not aware of it until then. So
Well, in our defense,
you don't have to defend yourself.
we can always do a better job of communicating.
Yeah.
But this issue didn't pop up until the May Highway Committee meeting. When we were looking at the cost of preparing the site that was initially planned for the construction of this building. And somebody, I don't know if it was Audie or myself, said, well, why don't we look at putting the building up on the other side of the admin building, where you wouldn't have that extensive cost. And, in terms of historically, a project moving through the channels in Trempealeau County, this has gone along pretty quickly. And at the time of the discussion, it was talked about that, well, we need to talk to Jerry and the people at the healthcare center about moving forward on this. And for all intents and purposes, that's happened relatively quickly for, like I said, historical events here in Trempealeau County government. But unfortunately, it was a surprise to Jerry when he did get notified about it, and we can pay attention to that as we move forward and make sure to include Jerry or his representative on all the things that we do in discussing this potential project.
Yeah, and maybe I overstated, the situation, I guess. I think in the past, my concern, Dan, is that we work very hard at communication on all levels with all departments that we can avoid a lot of possible
Yep.
backlashes.
I'm with you 100%, and it's my understanding that the relationship between the healthcare center and other departments in Trempealeau County are not the best currently.
Yeah.
And that may contribute, I mean, we should be taking more steps to maintain more than adequate communication between highway and this project and the healthcare center and what they're doing.
Yeah, and I know there's been a relationship with the highway department over the years, because that looks like that road going into the new building looks like it's been just brand new in there. That blacktop looks pretty,
The
pretty
highway-
black.
The highway and the health department have all, or
Yeah.
healthcare center,
Yeah.
have always communicated well, got along,
Yeah.
and, yeah, there's always help each other.
That's what I always thought too, anyway, that's what I know. We're gonna be meeting the 6th of next month, and we probably will get something out to the highway department and the highway committee in reference to that issue then.
Perfect, yeah. I didn't really have anything new to add today, just kind of, I was here more for an update as to, because last month we had requested to maybe discuss it with the healthcare center, and I see it was on the agenda today, maybe to get an update on that. Sounds like you just gave us that.
Yeah. I think it's gonna move along fairly quickly. Like I say, the issue of funding is going to be the more difficult task, I'm sure.
Yeah,
It always is.
yeah. Yeah, step one will be securing some land, some property somewhere, which we did kind of have in our existing perimeter out there, but this will be a lot better, where it's going to be far less expensive to build on this flat field. So kind of change course a little bit, but yeah, if we can get land secured, then move on to step two, figuring out funding and timelines.
And Jerry brought up the fact about the contract, they have the people on the land for farming.
Yeah.
And I think, and we said, I think Al, you said it wasn't gonna go we're not gonna build it next spring, it'll be down the road, and I think his contract comes up next year, so he would be able to talk to him, and
Sure.
he was, I think, okay with that. Jerry was more than,
Yeah.
nothing's happening this fall or nothing,
Yeah.
because he'd have to crop it early.
Yeah. I had just brought my laptop today in case, and Supervisor Orsh last month had mentioned he'd like to maybe take a tour or see our situation out there. I had some drone footage that I was gonna show, but we're missing, 2 people today, I see, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the only reason for my laptop. I mean, I don't know if you want to see it, Dick, or if you want to, I can email it to you, or if you guys want to come out and take a actual hands-on tour around the grounds, we can do that.
Yeah. I think these guys know it.
They've seen it,
Yeah,
yeah.
they've seen it, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been out there once.
Maybe I can swing
think I've
out.
been there once.
I might swing out there a little bit to see what you guys have out there.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So just swing by the office or call
Yep.
ahead.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I didn't have anything else really to add. Yep. Okay.
Sam, do you know Tim Robertson's extension?
He's not here today.
Oh, well then, never mind.
Pretty sure he's still in Spain.
Spain? So that's kind of out of Zoom range too, I guess.
I think maker.
All right. Items for next meeting. Anybody? Well, Samuel's group. Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Bye now.
Put that Robinson on next meeting, does he have something? Does he want to be back on, since he's not here this time?
Oh, Tim? Yeah. He's on every month.
Oh, he is?
IT updates, maintenance updates, and the Samuel's group. That's, anybody have anything out of the ordinary?
I think maybe we should consider walking through the remodel area. That needs to be remodeled, do you think?
I guess I'll argue with you on that.
Okay, good.
Maybe after we get a cost on a proposal in September, we can walk that.
We're gonna have to have a plan. I guess that's why, would it make sense to look at what's there now in terms of what we can utilize or continue to keep?
Good.
I don't know.
I know that, the county clerk's office, they have like a contingency plan up there for the remodel. I know it's nothing set in stone, so I've seen in your guys' office.
Yeah, they each have one now too.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess all I'm thinking is we need to try to give him some guidance in preparation for fall, I would think. And I don't know how I'm not sure that's the way, where we start, but I'm just,
Yeah, I mean, I was always under the impression that rebuilding this part, or redoing this, remodeling, was all in the whole bid, because, you know, one follows the other. And I am surprised that they don't have a plan with the estimate exactly. It was just a tentative, wasn't it? Yeah. And I was thought everything was kind of like,
Initially, the bond issue was 40 million for new construction, 3.5 for the remodeling. But the 3.5 went away as soon as some of our bid prices started coming in. And it became obvious that not only the 3.5 for remodeling, but the 3% contingency that was built into the project was also used up. Before we, well, we haven't accepted all the bids yet anyway. So,
Overhead is pretty much what happens.
and I think the contingency, I feel the contingency was too low. Well, obviously, after the fact, we know it is. I think it was a little bit low, but, and, you know, it sounded like he was comfortable with it at the time.
I asked them that.
Yeah.
And I went down to the highway meetings we were to, and there's some engineering firms there, and I asked them all, and every engineer I talked to pretty much said 10% is standard contingency. And he said they usually do 3.
he said today even he was comfy with that 3%.
And I thought,
Well, that's,
I was gonna ask him again today, but I already asked him, but he was happy with it, but everybody I've talked to said no, 10% is standard.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. I guess
So-
we have to move on.
Yeah, we gotta just find some way to pay this.
Yeah, that's why locking this up, this other money, at least temporarily anyway, and to see where we're at.
And I think once we get done with the meeting with finance, exact finance, it'll give us some direction, and it'd be nice to have, like you say, have it nailed down, so that when these do come up, you don't have to run back and say, oh, we're short here, we're short, you know?
Yeah. Well, let's put that on for the next meeting.
Well, I think when
Meeting date.
when he's here, I think we can, at that time, maybe we can ask him for more direction in terms of how we proceed to deal with this remodeling issue.
What's the day in July?
Well, we're meeting hopefully with the exec finance on the 11th, right?
Right.
So we want another meeting.
When were we, Dan, what were we talking about? You and I guess, visited a little bit about the regular meeting date.
That would be the 20th, the third Wednesday, unless we want to meet before the county board, and then it would be, that Wednesday would be the 13th.
And the 13th, you might be having an Ashley furniture tour.
Oh, really?
Ashley Furniture,
Either
what?
the 12th or the 13th, I believe.
We're going there,
Correct.
this committee?
Full
board?
To
County board.
Arcadia or here?
I believe. John's got it. He told me not to put it on the calendar yet.
Oh.
You shoot for the 12th. I don't have my calendar
12th
here.
is Halloween, yeah.
I hope it's the 13th that I'm off.
Okay, what,
Ooh, the 12th works for me, I don't care.
the county board, I mean, the exec committee is the 11th, you said?
Yep.
Well,
12th?
why don't we
12th.
just, why don't we meet?
12th, you got highway.
Oh, really? I better put that on there.
Well,
Don't
can we,
worry, I'll keep
well,
it in your calendar.
we could,
Why don't
we can meet right afterwards then if we're here.
Well, why don't we try to get on, see if they'll let us be the first item on the agenda, and then we'll just break. Leave them and come
And
back.
reconvene somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can't take minutes in both meetings, so.
Why not?
Why not?
That's not how that works.
You're good, but you're just.
I'm not that great at it, right?
Oh, come on.
I tried.
Well, we could have somebody, who is the Secretary of Property?
Don't look at me. No, I am.
Oh, you are? Well,
I'm the vice.
we're gonna have to, call on you and your talents just
Or
for
would you want
that.
to meet before county board?
They're meeting at 8:30 though, aren't they?
Before county board on the 18th.
Oh,
That
oh.
one, did you have?
Oh, I can't, I'm out of town that week. God damn, I forgot my book.
I could take a few minutes.
Yeah.
Let's just meet then.
When?
That's
On the
July
11th.
11,
July 11th.
8:30. And then we'll, like I say, if Sam could let Paul know, or whoever sets the agenda for exec finance, that we want
We're
to
gonna
be,
have to amend it.
we want to be first one on the agenda, right?
Yep.
We'll get in and out of there.
Okay. And
Sam will have to give me some secretarial lessons before then.
Yeah.
Sam, do you know where then they would go after the exec finance?
That's a good question, because I don't even know if there's a room open.
Well, we go just with Trempealeau rooms.
Go out in the front lawn.
Well, that room upstairs by your office, Sam,
Yeah.
that's almost always open. it seems.
Wisconsin room,
Yes.
is that open?
Yep, I just did it.
There's no auditors in your conference room, but they're gone, so.
Yeah.
So that's where we can meet, you think?
Yeah.
Good, good.
And with that, I will adjourn this meeting at 11:27 a.m. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you.